Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes, and today we will be diving into an insightful discussion on the fatal mid-air collision in Washington DC. Investigators in Washington have recovered flight data recorders, also known as black boxes, from an American Airlines jet that collided with a US Army helicopter on Wednesday. The crash claimed the lives of all 64 passengers on board the plane and 3 soldiers in the helicopter. US President Donald Trump offered his condolences from the White House yesterday, saying on Thursday that our hearts are shattered by the tragedy. Following this, Trump blamed diversity rules under his predecessors for the crash. Trump said that he believed individuals hired for air traffic control roles were not always qualified for the jobs they were meant to be doing. He offered no evidence for this, however. Trump specifically blamed policies under Obama and Joe Biden for poor safety standards, which he claims led to the crash. Trump suggested that the hiring guidance for the FAAs included preferences for those with disabilities involving hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability and dwarfism. Trump, when asked by a reporter why he felt that diversity initiatives were to blame, the president replied, "Because I have common sense." Joining us to discuss the crash and what has come since are 4 guests. We're joined by Scott Faulkner, who is a former Associate Administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. We have Major General Dhruv Katok, who's a Director of the India Foundation. We have Sean Prachnicki, designator, who is a professor at the Ohio State University for Aviation Studies, also joining us from Washington. And we have Captain Amit Singh, who's the founder of Safety Matters. Please, can I come to you first, Sean? I really want to look at the feeling that's there in DC at the moment. The dust has somewhat settled, but of course, the whole of Washington must have been shocked by what's happened.
Yes, most certainly. I mean, this is something that we haven't seen a mid-air collision in as long as I can remember. This is something that we've worried about for a long time because we've had several near misses over the last 5, 7 or so years, and unfortunately, it's finally happened.
Scott Faulkner, picking up on near misses that have been mentioned there. We are looking at an event which apparently happened the day before, where a helicopter and a plane got close to each other and the plane had to make movements away from it. Is this a coincidence, or do you think that this is an issue that hasn't been addressed within Washington?
It's an issue that hasn't been addressed. The Washington, D.C. airport, Reagan National, is probably one of the most difficult and complex aviation environments in America because you have short runways, you have multiple aircraft because of so many military bases nearby, and you have very narrow channels to approach the airport because of so many sensitive airspaces that surround the U.S. Capitol and the Pentagon. So most pilots say that of all the airports in America, Reagan National, or DCA, which is the call sign, is probably the most difficult. And it really was an accident waiting to happen.
Major General Dhruv Katok, thank you for joining us. Looking at the black boxes that have been found, what does this mean for investigators? What information will they be able to get out of them?
Thank you. You see, from the information which we have here, I think it will be very difficult even to get any worthwhile intelligence from the black box. Because what we have come to know is that when the crash took place, it took place soon after the air control had sent a message to the helicopter pilots, and the message was, "Can you see the plane?" And shortly after that, there was a crash. So I'm not sure whether the black box will be able to give any worthwhile intelligence to give clarity to the matter. But one thing I'm quite certain. It has got nothing to do with mechanical errors. There is a human error involved, and that human error is not on the part of the Bombardier aircraft. It is either on the part of the air control or the helicopter pilot, one of the two. The passenger aircraft was moving on course the way it was supposed to move. So everything else has happened around that aircraft, and it was a tragedy which I feel should not have happened. I mean, an air crash of this nature. I understand from what Mr. Scott Faulkner and Sean has said that it is a very difficult, Washington, D.C. is a very difficult landing area. But that notwithstanding, I mean, people cater for that. You've catered for the difficulty. So to have an accident of this nature, I think it's unacceptable. And we will see as to what exactly comes out from the black box.
Something else that was making the situation more difficult, Captain Amit Singh, was the fact that this was done at night, of course, the flight from the helicopter and also the landing. What sort of an impact can flying at night have compared to flying in the day, other than, of course, the obvious, which is daylight?
At night especially, you have the city lights behind in the background. So even if there's a Black Hawk with bare minimum lights, a strobe or a beacon, but the city lights would merge with the city lights. So even if the Bombardier pilots are looking out, and vice versa for the helicopter pilots, this is at a low altitude. The helicopter was flying at about 200 and 300, and the Bombardier was descending. So at that low altitude, it is very easy to miss out, especially at night. The Black Hawk is not supposed to be seen. And when the pilots have a runway change, so now they are concentrating on landing on a shorter runway. So they are more worried about the landing point or the aiming, the touchdown point. So the cognitive capacity is spent towards that. And the brain, basically, the peripheral vision goes down when you are looking hard at something. So that is one thing when the helicopter pilots, if they are using night vision goggles, so then again that reduces their peripheral vision and the depth perception. So at night there are multiple issues, complications which happen around the visual field and the cognitive capacity. The colors basically tend to merge as compared to day because of the capacity of the cones and the rods. So different colors change during night and they merge with each other. So person and I think they were operating on different frequencies. So the situational awareness was totally cut off. The ATC was communicating with both the aircrafts, but each aircraft individually was not aware of the real-time monitoring of the position of the other aircraft. So there has to be, when the situation is so tight that the complexity is high, then the safety standards also have to be high. In the past, we have seen San Francisco when the Air Canada approached almost at 50 feet above 3 aircrafts, almost 1,000 people. That was close to what could have been the worst air disaster. But there we saw that fatigue was an issue. If the pilots had been awake for 17 hours, then that is equivalent to having a blood alcohol level of 0.05%. And so at night especially, these all complications increase. The controllers were short, they were overworked in San Francisco. And here also we have heard of such issues, although we haven't seen a statement from FAA about that. But these are all complications. So an accident does not happen out of the blue. There are always near misses, serious incidents. Yes. So one must look at these serious incidents and take action preempt before such thing happens.
Yes, Sean Prochnicki, of course you are in Washington at the moment. What I really want to gain an understanding of is the response after both aircraft went into the water. We've been playing some visuals on screen of the recovery efforts, but what was your feeling when those efforts were going on, given the temperatures, given the conditions, and given the freezing water?
Well, with that type of recovery effort, not only with the altitude that the plane and both the helicopter fell, which was believed very early on to be about 300 feet, that altitude in and of itself was very likely a non-survivable altitude. When you hit water from that height, it's very similar to hitting concrete. But I would say even more of a problem was just the temperature of the water. Even if the passengers had survived that fall, that plunge into the water, with the temperature of the water being just a little bit above freezing, from a standpoint of hypothermia, a person has, less than 15 minutes before hypothermia, certainly less than 30 minutes to survive those conditions. So this is a scenario that had at least two factors that can produce a very rapid fatality. So when I saw this, that's immediately what I thought was this is most likely a non-survivable accident just because of those two things alone.
Scott Faulkner, I want to move on now to comments that have been made, specifically first looking at what Donald Trump has had to say. One of the recent comments that he's made on his Truth Social platform is referring to the height of the helicopter. Can we get an understanding from you of why there is a restriction on the height of helicopters in Washington specifically? And also, just leading on from that, why do you think the helicopter was flying higher than it was meant to if Trump's claims are indeed true?
There's been a number of reports that the helicopter was about 200 feet higher in altitude than it was supposed to be. And if that's the case, then that's why it would the jet would have collided with it, because it obviously clipped the back end of the jet, and the jet broke into three different pieces. We're back to really the main issue, which is the shortage of staffing at the air traffic control tower there at Reagan National. There was an actual Inspector General report written in June of 2023 talking about that because of the COVID restrictions, there was almost an 18-month hiatus in training and certifying air traffic controllers across the country. And it raised the issue that you had understaffing at these locations, and you also had limited certification of a lot of these air traffic controllers and their supervisors. So I think when we look at, obviously a crash like this probably has multiple contributing factors, but one of the ones that really should be explored is the lack of training and then the lack of staffing at the air traffic control tower there at Reagan National.
Major General Katok, just building off on what Scott Faulkner said there, do you think this is a situation where multiple issues have happened and that's caused to this tragedy, or do you think there will be one sort of person or one organisation that will be blamed for it?
No, you see, I really don't think, in my view, we can't pinpoint the blame onto any one particular organization. But once we determine as to exactly what happened, then the blame can be pinpointed. But ultimately, in my view, it is a human failure. So it rests on only two issues. One is the training of the air traffic controllers. Were they up to the standard or not? And secondly is who was, I believe that there were trainees also in the Black Hawk. Now, who was actually in the helicopter controls at that time, at that point? And Captain Amit has already indicated the challenges which take place during the night. So I think all these multiple factors will come in. But the third factor, which President Trump has also stated, he was spoken about the diversity and equity issues. And have people been put in there who are not up to the mark on this grounds? Now, I don't think there should be any problem in having diversity and equity so long as the training standards are maintained as to the levels which are required. Then nothing else matters. But if to put certain social issues into a system and really try to force it in without meeting standards, I think that would be a very dangerous trend. And should that have happened, then I think President Trump would be right in so stating. Joshua.
Sean Pruchnicki, I'd like to grab your opinion on that, please, as an American. Trump's comments specifically relating to diversity, looking at the Obama and the Biden administrations. Do you think Trump is using this tragedy to make a political point, or do you agree with the statements that he's made?
I think his statements that he made last night were absolutely absurd and quite embarrassing to be an American, quite frankly. Has absolutely no claim whatsoever. That was completely politically motivated. We have no evidence whatsoever that there was any role like that. We have families, at that point in time that are having absolutely the worst day of their life. And this comment about, having common sense, Just unbelievably absurd. He should, return to talking about other things that he doesn't know about. He doesn't know anything about accident investigation, so absolutely not. Here's the bottom line. We have staffing problems with controllers here in the United States. We've seen this before. They're working 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts. We've had other near misses. The NTSB has repeatedly warned the FAA about this. Our chairman of the NTSB has testified to Congress just last year about concerns over this. Those are the problems that aren't getting fixed, and it finally happened. And I'll say one more thing. The fact that you have airspace at Reagan and this controller was put in that position to work two different frequencies, which would be unheard of in such busy airspace, and the controller and the supervisor that were forced to have to do that is so, just unheard of. Those are the issues we need to focus on. What he said was unbelievably absurd.
Captain Amit Singh, I want to build on that point and explore the reasons behind the lack of staffing. With more knowledge of that position and that role, is it something that anybody can do, or what's the process to getting into that position?
Well, it is a stream which you have to choose. Basically, elsewhere in the world, globally, it is you have to have an engineering background or something. But depending on the situation in hand, so things can be molded. So safety is basically a balance between production and protection. If you have a shortage of staff not qualified, then you have to look at other avenues like the Air Force typically. Just as in the pilot stream, we depend on the Air Force, armed forces to draw manpower. Similarly, we have to draw manpower from there, use technology, and the most important part is the fatigue. The fatigue has to be taken care of. Qualification of people is not an issue. It is how attractive you're making that profession. Even I've heard in the United States, flying is no longer an attractive profession. You have to make it an attractive profession. You have to give people what is the motivation? Why should they become air traffic controllers or pilots? It is not just the money. It is kind of self-motivation. Why should a person work? You have to look at the why, what drives them. So you have to have a whole avenue or channel from which you draw a stream. So it has to be a concerted effort along with the universities so that people are channelized from there and not just technically qualified staff. Because qualification is not an issue. It is more of motivation. Why should a person become an air traffic controller or a pilot? So that is a bigger problem, and globally there's a shortage of pilots and air traffic controllers. So it is for the bigger benefit that the ICAO, United Nations body, and FAA, EASA, they look at what are the qualification standards which are required for the future generation. So the next gen, like we look at the next gen pilots, what are they likely to be and what should they be qualified? What are the competencies they need to have? So we need to draw up a new plan from the scratch and not just modify and look for ad hoc arrangements. So
Yes.
a completely new plan has to be drawn up.
Yes, and Scott Faulkner, as we head towards the end of this discussion, I want to bring it back to Trump's comments. He's popular in America and has been popular. We know that because we're not too long from an election where he won the popular vote, but officials have put backlash on these comments and really responded angrily to them. I want to understand the feeling in America after a tragedy with the comments he's made. Is he unpopular at this moment in time amongst many people for his response?
I think he misspoke clearly because, number one, we don't know individuals by name and demographic of who was actually involved in the Reagan National Tower for this air traffic control situation. So until you actually know those individuals, you cannot draw these kind of conclusions. But the key issue here is that there's a lot of things that go into a president's popularity. This, I thought, was a misspeak. There's a lot of other things going on regarding the his nominees before the Senate and a lot of his executive orders. So there's a lot of things that factor into his popularity.
Sean Pruchnicki, I'd like to come to you to end this, and I want to bring it back to Washington and also bring it back to the families. How does Washington recover from this? How does it throw its arms around the families and the people who witnessed this attack, who maybe knew people who were involved in the attack, but also how does Washington DC rebound from such a tragedy?
Well, so it's the first part is, our National Transportation Safety Board. Those are the experts. They do an outstanding job. Let them do their job. Let them do their work. It may take a year for them, and they're going to be extremely thorough in what they do. So we have to be very careful with speculation. And then people that witness this, other people involved, being able to provide support for them, especially the air traffic controller that was involved, any supervisors involved, anyone that that witnessed this, they're going to need help too. They're going to need support for this. Extremely traumatic. Other pilots that were on the ground and witnessed too, they might need some psychological support as well. This is unbelievably traumatic to witness something like this. So, the city as a whole, especially the people that witnessed this, there's that is the two main areas that are going to be needed to be able to move forward from an incident like this or an accident like this. I mean,
Sean Pruchnicki, thank you very much for speaking to us. Also, thank you to our other guests. Scott Faulkner, thank you to Major General Dhruv Khattuk, and finally, thank you to Captain Amit Singh. The tragedy and the investigation will continue to unfold over the coming days, but this is the place where you want to be for all of those updates. Thank you.